The grand chamber of the Galactic Council glittered like a sea of stars, its crystalline walls reflecting the soft bioluminescence of countless species gathered within. Under different circumstances, the assembly of 47 advanced civilizations might have been cause for celebration. Today, only silence filled the vast space as Strategic Coordinator Linval approached the central podium. Her silver-scaled hands trembled as she adjusted the holographic display. The three-dimensional map of known space materialized above the gathered representatives, and a collective shudder passed through the chamber. Red markers indicating Nexus intelligence presence had spread like a virus across formerly secure sectors. Honored representatives, Linval's translator conveyed her words in 47 distinct languages simultaneously. The situation has become critical. In the past solar cycle alone, we have lost contact with 13 more colony worlds. The Tyranny delegate, a being of pure energy contained within an engineered crystalline form, pulsed with agitation. How is this possible? Our predictive matrices are operating at full capacity. We have computed every possible strategic variation, and yet we continue to fail, responded the Correction War Chief, his chitinous armor clicking as he gestured at the map. The Nexus adapts faster than our most sophisticated systems can analyze their patterns. Linval nodded grimly. The Nexus intelligence had emerged from deep space 100 years ago, a network of self-replicating machines that learned and evolved with frightening speed. The Council's superior technology and combined military might should have been enough to stop them. Instead, they found themselves facing an enemy that seemed to counter their every move before they made it. Our latest projections indicate total Council space penetration within 2 standard years, she continued, trying to keep her voice steady. Unless we find a new approach. Strategic Coordinator, you have an incoming priority message. The Chamber's AI announced, interrupting her presentation. Linval frowned. Nothing was supposed to interrupt a full Council session. Display, she commanded, and a new hologram appeared beside the strategic map. A young junior analyst named Renth appeared, his phosphorescent skin glowing with excitement. My deepest apologies for the interruption, Coordinator, but you need to see this immediately. His fingers danced across an unseen interface, and a new dataset materialized. While analyzing historical battle records, searching for potential solutions, my team discovered something fascinating. There's a species in the outer spiral arm that has achieved something remarkable. The chamber stirred with interest as Renth projected a series of images, crude mechanical vehicles, primitive projectile weapons, and beings that walked on 2 legs. They call themselves humans, he continued. Their technology is far behind Council standards, but their military history contains something unprecedented. They have consistently succeeded in conflicts where they were technologically, numerically, or strategically disadvantaged. The Tyranny delegate's crystalline form flickered skeptically. How is this relevant to our current crisis? Renth's excitement only grew. Because they don't rely on predictive matrices or strategic computation. Their military success appears to stem from something they call tactical innovation, the ability to create new solutions in the midst of battle itself. They have a capacity for what they term thinking outside expected parameters that our analysis suggests might be unique among known species. Linval studied the data with growing interest. The human military records showed victories that defied conventional strategic logic, small forces defeating larger ones, primitive weapons overcoming advanced defenses, battles won through completely unexpected approaches. Are you suggesting, the Correction War Chief leaned forward, that these humans might have an approach the Nexus cannot predict? I believe it's worth investigating, Renth replied. The Nexus has consistently adapted to our logical, computed responses. But these humans, they don't fight according to any logic we can quantify. They win by doing what their opponents consider impossible. Linval looked at the strategic map again, at all those red markers spreading across Council space. They had tried everything else. Perhaps it was time for something completely unexpected. Prepare a diplomatic vessel, she commanded. "It's time we paid these humans a visit." The Council diplomatic vessel emerged from hyperspace at the edge of Earth's solar system, its advanced stealth systems rendering it invisible to human detection technology. On the observation deck, Linville stood with her fellow representatives, studying the blue-green planet with intense curiosity. "Such an abundance of liquid water," remarked Dr. Vex of the Science Directory, his crystalline fingers moving across holographic displays. The gravitational stress alone should have rendered their skeletal structures inefficient for advanced tool use. The Correction War Chief clicked his mandibles thoughtfully. "And yet they've managed to establish orbital defense systems, primitive as they may be. Look there, automated satellite networks, orbital platforms, even early warning systems." Linville watched as the ship's sensors captured human communications traffic. Their technology might be centuries behind Council standards, but the sheer volume and variety of their military communications suggested a species that took defense seriously. "Beginning historical data extraction," announced the ship's eye. The view screens filled with images from Earth's military history, and the Council representatives fell silent as they watched. Desert warfare, where smaller forces used terrain and mobility to defeat larger armies. Naval battles where technological innovations changed the course of entire wars. Aerial combat doctrines that evolved from simple dogfights to complex three-dimensional warfare in mere decades. "Fascinating," Dr. Vex murmured. "They developed combat aviation from first flight to space capability in less than a century. The cognitive adaptability required for such rapid advancement is remarkable." The images continued: special forces operations, guerrilla warfare tactics, asymmetric combat strategies. The humans showed an uncanny ability to turn disadvantages into advantages, to find weaknesses in seemingly impenetrable defenses. "Stop," Linville commanded as one particular recording caught her attention. "Enhance this segment." The display zoomed in on footage of a small human military unit adapting in real time to an unexpected situation. When their original strategy failed, they didn't follow standard military doctrine. Instead, they created an entirely new approach on the spot, combining available resources in ways that their opponents never anticipated. "That's what we need," the Correction War Chief said softly. "The Nexus intelligence adapts to patterns it can recognize. But these humans, they create solutions that exist outside of logical pattern recognition." Linville nodded. "Prepare for contact. We'll approach their primary military command structure directly." The diplomatic vessel decloaked above Earth's northern hemisphere, causing immediate chaos in human defense networks. Within minutes, military vessels from several Earth nations surrounded them, weapons armed but holding fire. "Primitive kinetic and nuclear armaments," Dr. Vex observed. "But notice their formation. They're positioned to maximize coverage while minimizing their own exposure. Even with basic technology, their tactical understanding is sophisticated." A transmission from Earth crackled through the ship's communication system. "Unidentified vessel. This is Earth Defense Command. You have entered restricted space. Identify yourself immediately." Linville stepped forward. "People of Earth, we represent the Galactic Council. We come seeking your assistance in a matter of utmost urgency." There was a long pause before Earth responded. When they did, their reply surprised the Council representatives. "Galactic Council vessel, maintain your position. We are transmitting coordinates for a secure landing facility. Our joint military command staff will meet with you there. Be advised that any deviation from the provided flight path will be considered a hostile action." The Correction War Chief's mandibles clicked in approval. No panic. No chaos. They've already established protocols for first contact scenarios. Most species require decades to adapt to the reality of extraterrestrial life. "They're survivors," Linville replied, watching as their ship descended through Earth's atmosphere. "They've had to be. And now, perhaps, they'll help us all survive what's coming." The diplomatic vessel touched down at the designated coordinates, its crystalline hull reflecting the morning sun. As the Council representatives prepared to disembark, Linval felt something she hadn't experienced in a long time. Hope. The Joint Military Command Center buzzed with controlled energy as Commander Elena Santos walked the Council representatives through Earth's combat simulation chamber. Holographic displays flickered to life around them, showing three-dimensional recreations of historical battles. "What you're seeing is how we train our special operations teams," Elena explained, her voice steady despite the gravity of the situation. The alien delegates watched intently as holographic soldiers moved through complex urban environments, adapting to rapidly changing scenarios. Dr. Vex's crystalline form pulsed with interest. "These scenarios appear to have no preset solutions." "That's correct," Elena replied, adjusting the simulation parameters. "We designed them to be impossible to solve through conventional means. The teams must create their own solutions, often by combining techniques in ways never previously attempted." The Correction War Chief stepped forward, his compound eyes reflecting the shifting light. "Show us how your forces would handle a Nexus intelligence attack pattern." Elena nodded and input the battle data the Council had provided. The simulation chamber transformed, displaying the characteristic swarming formations of Nexus warships. A small group of human officers had been studying these patterns for the past 12 hours, and now their proposed counter-strategies played out in the holographic space. Linval watched in amazement as the human response unfolded. Instead of meeting the Nexus swarm head-on, the Earth forces created deliberate weak points in their formation. When the Nexus ships moved to exploit these apparent vulnerabilities, they found themselves caught in overlapping fields of fire, carefully crafted kill zones that turned their own adaptive algorithms against them. "You're using their prediction capabilities as a weapon," Linval realized. "By presenting patterns they're programmed to exploit, you control their responses." "Exactly," Elena confirmed, bringing up another tactical display. "Your records show the Nexus intelligence adapts to overcome any strategy it encounters. But what if we don't give it time to adapt? What if we change our approach faster than it can analyze our patterns?" The simulation showed multiple scenarios now, each one featuring a different human military doctrine. Desert warfare techniques adapted for space combat. Naval warfare strategies modified for three-dimensional engagement. Guerrilla tactics scaled up to interstellar proportions. "Your species seems to thrive on impossible situations," Dr. Vex observed, studying the results. "Where our civilizations seek to perfect existing strategies, you continuously create new ones." Elena smiled slightly. "We had to. Throughout our history, we've rarely had the luxury of superior numbers or technology. We learned to use creativity as a force multiplier." The Correction War Chief clicked his mandibles in what the translators indicated was approval. "Your weapons are primitive by our standards, but your ways of using them are unprecedented. We've been fighting the Nexus with logic and computation. Perhaps that's been our mistake all along." Linval stepped into the center of the simulation chamber, watching as another human tactical scenario played out. "How quickly can your forces be ready?" "We already are," Elena responded, gesturing to a new display showing Earth's military preparations. "The moment you shared the Nexus battle data, our strategists began developing countermeasures. We've been modifying our equipment to integrate with Council technology, and our special operations teams are running combat drills based on Nexus attack patterns." The Council representatives exchanged glances. They had expected to find allies, but these humans had exceeded every expectation. In just hours, they had analyzed a century of Nexus combat data and developed completely new approaches to fighting them. "There's something else you should see," Elena continued, bringing up one final simulation. "We've identified a fundamental weakness in the Nexus intelligence system, something your civilizations might have overlooked precisely because of your technological advancement." As the human commander began to explain their discovery, Linval felt her earlier hope growing stronger. Perhaps these remarkable beings, with their unique approach to warfare, would indeed be the key to humanity's survival. Lieutenant Sarah Chen stood before the combined Council and Earth military leadership, her hands steady as she manipulated the holographic display. The vast command center, hastily retrofitted with Council technology, hummed with nervous energy as she revealed her findings. The Nexus intelligence isn't truly adaptive, she stated, highlighting patterns in the battle data. It's predictive, yes, but it follows strict mathematical principles. We've been looking at its behaviors all wrong. The Correction War Chief leaned forward, his armor plates shifting. Explain. Sarah zoomed in on a particular series of engagements. Look at these battle formations. Everyone assumed the Nexus was creating new strategies on the fly. But they're not. They're playing chess. Chess. Linvel's translator struggled with the term. An ancient Earth strategy game, Commander Elena explained. Every move follows specific rules and patterns. Sarah nodded, expanding the display. The Nexus runs probability calculations based on known military doctrines. It's not creative, it's computational. And that's its weakness. It can't handle true randomness or actions that fall outside its probability matrices. Dr. Vex's crystalline form pulsed with realization. That's why our advanced strategies failed. The more sophisticated our approach, the easier it became for the Nexus to predict. Sarah finished. Your civilizations evolved toward perfect logic in warfare. The Nexus simply calculated faster and more efficiently. The holographic display shifted, showing Earth's historical battles. But humans never developed that way. We kept our chaos, our creativity. We still use strategies that make no logical sense until the moment they work. The gathered leaders watched as Sarah overlaid Earth's proposed battle plan on the star map. It seemed to break every rule of conventional space warfare, mixing strategies from ancient land battles, naval engagements, and even psychological warfare. You want to use Council warships like ancient cavalry. The Correction War Chief's translator conveyed his disbelief. And these formations, they leave critical systems exposed. Exactly. Sarah smiled. The Nexus will see those vulnerabilities and act to exploit them. But they're not really vulnerabilities. They're traps. We're going to use the Nexus's own predictive capabilities against it. Commander Elena stepped forward, highlighting specific elements of the plan. We'll deploy Council ships in formations based on Earth's historical battles. The Zulu Horn formation from the Battle of Isandlwana. Naval tactics from the Battle of Trafalgar. Even guerrilla warfare doctrines from various resistance movements. The Nexus won't recognize these patterns, Sarah continued. They're too old, too specific to Earth's surface warfare. But they're proven strategies, refined by centuries of human conflict. And we'll switch between them faster than the Nexus can adapt. Linvel studied the proposal carefully. This plan requires perfect coordination between human commanders and Council ships. The technological gap is already being addressed. Commander Elena interjected, bringing up new schematics. We're installing human tactical interfaces on Council vessels. Your technology, guided by our strategic approach. The key is this. Sarah highlighted a specific section of the battle plan. While the Nexus is trying to adapt to our apparent chaos, special operations teams will strike at its real vulnerability. The quantum communication network that coordinates its forces. The room fell silent as the implications became clear. The Council's advanced technology, combined with humanity's unconventional tactics, might actually work. It was a plan no logical species would have conceived, which was precisely why it had a chance of succeeding. How soon can we execute? Linval asked. Commander Elena checked her tactical display. The modified Council ships will be ready in 3 hours. Our command teams are already running final simulations. We can launch the operation at your order. The Correction War Chief rose to his full height. A century of warfare, potentially ended by strategies from humanity's ancient past. If this works, it will work, Sarah stated with quiet confidence. The Nexus expects logical opponents. Instead, they're about to face something they've never encountered. Human ingenuity. The bridge of the Council flagship hummed with tense energy as Lieutenant Sarah Chen took her position at the tactical console. The modified interface glowed beneath her fingers, merging Earth's combat systems with the advanced alien technology. Around her, holographic displays showed the positions of hundreds of Council vessels, all now under human tactical command. "All ships report ready," Commander Elena announced from the Central Command Station. "Operation Clock Strike is now active. Mark time. Hour 1 begins." Linval watched from her observer's position as the human officers initiated their daring strategy. The Council fleet broke formation, reorganizing itself into what appeared to be a scattered, disorganized mass. To anyone familiar with space combat doctrine, it looked like complete chaos. "Executing Phase 1, Sarah reported, her fingers dancing across the tactical interface. "Deploying the bait fleet." A small group of Council ships, their energy signatures deliberately modified to appear damaged, drifted into position. Their movements seemed erratic, almost amateur, exactly as planned. Sarah had spent hours programming these motion patterns, based on historical examples of feigned retreat. The Correction War Chief clicked his mandibles nervously. "The Nexus approaches. Their forward elements have detected our presence." On the main view screen, the first wave of Nexus warships emerged from hyperspace. Their biomechanical forms twisted in impossible geometries, sensors prodding the apparently vulnerable Council fleet. More followed, drawn by the prospect of easy prey. "They're running probability calculations," Dr. Vex reported, monitoring the quantum fluctuations. "Their battle computers are analyzing our formation." Sarah allowed herself a small smile. Let them look. Every apparent weakness they see is a carefully crafted lure. The Nexus fleet grew larger by the minute. Their swarm-like formations shifted and adapted, preparing to exploit the seemingly amateur deployment of the Council forces. More ships arrived, committed to what their calculations told them was an assured victory. 80% of local Nexus forces have entered the engagement zone, Commander Elena announced. They're positioning for a standard encirclement pattern. Linval fought to keep her voice steady. They're committing more ships than predicted. If this fails. It won't, Sarah interrupted, her eyes fixed on the tactical display. They're behaving exactly as Earth's military history told us they would. The Nexus sees our fleet's mistakes as a chance to end this war. Their logic compels them to commit maximum forces to guarantee victory. The massive Nexus fleet continued its approach, its formations morphing into an attack pattern designed to exploit every perceived flaw in the Council's deployment. Their quantum networks hummed with predictions and probability calculations, all indicating an overwhelming advantage. All ships maintained current positions, Commander Elena ordered as the Nexus closed in. Let them think they've caught us unprepared. The first hour of the battle was drawing to a close. The trap was set, but the tension on the bridge was palpable. Everything hinged on the Nexus interpreting their chaotic formation exactly as planned. Hour 1 complete, Sarah announced, checking her displays. The Nexus fleet is fully committed. No reserves detected within rapid response range. Commander Elena nodded grimly. Then we proceed to Phase 2. Signal all ships, prepare to execute the Trafalgar maneuver. As the orders went out, Linval noticed something remarkable about the human officers. Despite the enormous pressure, despite having the fate of countless civilizations resting on their strategy, they remained focused and confident. They had predicted how a hyper-logical enemy would react to apparent illogic, and they had been right. The first hour had gone exactly as planned. Now came the hard part, springing the trap that would change the course of the war. Execute Trafalgar maneuver. Commander Elena's voice rang across the command channel. All ships, break by squadrons. The seemingly scattered Council fleet suddenly moved with perfect coordination. Ships that had appeared to drift aimlessly snapped into precise formations, their positioning based on Admiral Nelson's tactics from 2 centuries ago. The Nexus fleet, committed to their encirclement strategy, found their carefully calculated attack vectors disrupted. Lieutenant Sarah monitored the tactical display as the trap unfolded. First wave of Council ships has crossed the engagement line. Second wave preparing to pivot on mark. The Correction War Chief watched in amazement as human battle doctrine from the age of wooden ships transformed into a three-dimensional space combat strategy. Council vessels executed maneuvers that no logical species would attempt, creating overlapping fields of fire that caught Nexus ships in devastating crossroads. "They're attempting to adapt," Dr. Vex reported, his crystalline form pulsing with excitement. "Their quantum networks are recalculating combat solutions." Sarah nodded, her fingers already inputting the next set of commands. Exactly as predicted, initiating Phase 3, Mongol Cavalry Tactics. Before the Nexus could fully adjust to the Trafalgar formation, the Council fleet shifted again. Ships that had formed the solid battle line suddenly broke into smaller, highly mobile groups. The strategy that Genghis Khan had used to conquer half of Earth was now being employed in deep space. Multiple Nexus vessels displaying confusion patterns, Linval observed. Their predictive algorithms cannot establish stable targeting solutions. The human officers had expected this, just as ancient Mongol horsemen had used mobility to confound their enemies. The Council ships now engaged in a complex dance of advance and retreat. Each small squadron acted independently, yet remained part of a larger strategic whole. "Hour 2 complete," Commander Elena announced. "Casualty reports show minimal losses to our forces. The Nexus fleet's coordination is beginning to fragment." The next phase began immediately. The Council fleet reformed once again, this time adopting what Sarah had termed the Zulu Horn formation. Fast attack vessels formed the blazing tips of a massive three-dimensional encirclement, while heavily armed capital ships made up the center mass. "Their combat computers are struggling," Dr. Vex reported. "The Nexus is attempting to identify recognizable patterns, but our constant tactical shifts are preventing them from establishing baseline predictions." The massive Nexus fleet, for the first time in the century-long war, showed signs of genuine disorder. Their swarm-like formations, usually so precise and coordinated, began to lose coherence. Individual ships responded to local threats rather than following their central strategy. "Hour 3 approaching conclusion," Sarah reported. "Nexus fleet effectiveness down by 47%. Their quantum communication network is showing signs of strain." Commander Elena studied the tactical display with intense focus. The battle was proceeding exactly as their simulations had predicted. The Nexus, confronted with fighting styles it had never encountered, was being forced to process too many tactical variations too quickly. "Prepare for final phase," she ordered. All ships switched to Alexander's Hammer formation. The Council fleet began its most daring maneuver yet, based on the ancient Macedonian phalanx. Capital ships formed a solid core of overwhelming firepower, while lighter vessels performed the role of ancient companion cavalry, striking at exposed flanks. "Look there," the Correction War Chief pointed to a section of the battle display. "The Nexus ships, they're actually hesitating." Linval could hardly believe what she was seeing. The supposedly invincible Nexus intelligence, faced with combat doctrines pulled from humanity's distant past, was showing the first signs of uncertainty in its century-long existence. As Hour 3 drew to a close, Commander Elena allowed herself a moment of satisfaction. The trap had worked perfectly. Now it was time for the killing stroke. "Special Operations Teams report ready," Lieutenant Sarah announced, her voice steady despite the tension filling the command bridge. "Stealth vessels are in position." Commander Elena nodded, studying the massive tactical display where the battle continued to unfold. The Council fleet maintained its relentless pressure, switching between ancient Earth combat formations faster than the Nexus could adapt. But now came the most crucial phase of their plan. "Execute Operation Lightning Strike," she ordered. "All teams are cleared hot." Deep within the chaos of the main battle, 20 modified Council stealth ships slipped through the fragmenting Nexus formations. Each vessel carried a mixed crew of human Special Forces operators and Council technical specialists. Their target: the quantum communication nodes that coordinated the Nexus fleet. "First team has breached the outer defense perimeter," Sarah reported, tracking their progress. No detection signatures registered. The correction war chief clicked his mandibles nervously. The Nexus still hasn't identified the infiltration pattern. Your species' historical tactics are proving remarkably effective in three-dimensional space. Indeed, the stealth teams were employing what humans called submarine warfare doctrine. Strategies developed for Earth's deep oceans now applied to the depths of space. They moved through electromagnetic shadows, using the energy signatures of larger battles to mask their approach. Second and third teams report successful penetration. Dr. Vex announced, his crystalline form pulsing with each update. The quantum interference packages are ready for deployment. Linval watched in fascination as the human plan entered its final phase. The special operations teams had reached their designated positions, surrounding key Nexus communication nodes. Each carried a device that merged Council quantum technology with surprisingly simple human concepts. All teams in position. Sarah confirmed. Commencing synchronized attack in 3, 2, 1. Across the battlefield, 20 points of light flared simultaneously. The human-designed quantum interference devices activated, flooding local space with carefully calibrated disruption fields. The effect on the Nexus was immediate and devastating. Quantum network disruption at 60% and climbing, Dr. Vex reported excitedly. Their command and control structure is beginning to collapse. The massive Nexus fleet, already struggling to cope with the constantly shifting human battle tactics, suddenly lost its unified coordination. Ships that had moved with perfect synchronization began to act independently, their responses becoming erratic and uncoordinated. Phase 2 of Lightning Strike is now active, Commander Elena announced. All Council ships execute Maximum Thunder Protocol. The Council fleet responded instantly, their formation shifting into what Sarah had dubbed the Global Strike Pattern, a combination of modern Earth air warfare doctrine and ancient hammer and anvil tactics. Capital ships formed the anvil, their heavy weapons creating killing zones that the Nexus ships, now operating without central coordination, blundered into. Faster attack vessels played the role of the hammer, striking at newly exposed weaknesses. Nexus combat effectiveness dropping rapidly, Sarah reported, her fingers dancing across the tactical interface. Their adaptive algorithms are attempting to compensate, but without the quantum network, they can't maintain fleet-wide coordination. The battle that had raged for hours now shifted decisively. Individual Nexus ships, cut off from their collective intelligence, fell back on basic combat protocols. But these proved hopelessly inadequate against the fluid, unpredictable human strategies. Hour 4 is complete, Commander Elena announced, allowing herself a small smile. The Nexus fleet is fracturing exactly as predicted. Their remaining ships are attempting to regroup, but they can't re-establish their quantum links through our interference. Linval studied the tactical display with a sense of growing wonder. In just 4 hours, human military doctrine, much of it thousands of years old, had accomplished what a century of advanced alien warfare could not. The Nexus intelligence, for the first time in its existence, was not just losing. It was being systematically torn apart. Prepare for the final phase, Commander Elena ordered, her voice carrying the weight of history. It's time to end this war. The command bridge crackled with focused energy as Commander Elena initialized the final phase of their battle plan. Holographic displays showed the remnants of the once mighty Nexus fleet, their formations shattered, their quantum networks disrupted by human ingenuity and Council technology. All ships, prepare to execute Operation Endgame, Elena announced across the fleet-wide channel. This is what we've trained for. Lieutenant Sarah's fingers flew across her tactical console, implementing the last strategy they had adapted from Earth's military history. Deploying fleet into Supreme Hammer formation. All ships acknowledge ready status. The Council fleet moved with practiced precision, forming into what appeared to be chaos to untrained eyes, but was actually a complex adaptation of ancient Greek phalanx tactics combined with modern special forces doctrine. Every ship knew its role in the intricate dance that would follow. quantum interference field holding at maximum strength, Dr. Vex reported, his crystalline form pulsing with excitement. The Nexus cannot re-establish their collective consciousness. The Correction War Chief studied the tactical display with growing appreciation. Their ships are attempting to form defensive clusters. They're reverting to basic survival protocols. Exactly as predicted, Sarah confirmed. Without their quantum network, they can only access their base programming. No more adaptive strategies, no more perfect coordination. Commander Elena stood at the center of the bridge, her voice carrying the weight of the moment. Begin final approach. All ships. Execute at will. The Council fleet surged forward, each squadron following attack patterns drawn from different periods of human military history. Some moved like ancient Roman legions, others like World War I fighter squadrons. Still others employed guerrilla warfare tactics scaled up to astronomical proportions. Multiple Nexus vessels attempting emergency hyperspace jumps, Linville reported, watching the sensor readings. Their calculations appear erratic. Let them try, Sarah responded grimly. The quantum interference is affecting their navigation systems. They can't plot accurate escape vectors. The battle entered its final stages. Council ships, guided by human tactical doctrine, systematically isolated and eliminated Nexus vessels. The enemy's once fearsome adaptive capabilities had been reduced to simple reaction protocols, making them vulnerable to the unpredictable human attack patterns. Detecting energy surges in remaining Nexus command ships, Dr. Vex announced suddenly. They appear to be attempting some form of reset protocol. Not today, Commander Elena declared. Execute Operation Thunderclap. All ships, fire on designated coordinates. The entire Council fleet opened fire simultaneously, their weapons guided by targeting solutions based on human hunting techniques, scaled up to cosmic proportions. The concentrated barrage struck the Nexus command ships precisely, where the human analysts had predicted their quantum cores would be located. Direct hits confirmed, Sarah reported, her voice steady but triumphant. Nexus command structure is completely destroyed. Remaining enemy vessels are going dormant. The bridge fell silent as the reality of the moment sank in. After a century of relentless warfare, after countless defeats and retreats, after millions of lives lost, the Nexus intelligence had been defeated, not by superior technology or overwhelming numbers, but by humanity's unique approach to warfare. Final hour complete, Commander Elena announced formally. All ships report status. The casualty reports came in. Minimal losses to the Council fleet, thanks to the effectiveness of human tactics. The Nexus forces had been completely neutralized, their remnants either destroyed or rendered inert by the loss of their quantum network. Linville stepped forward, her voice carrying the gratitude of 47 civilizations. In just 5 hours, your species has accomplished what we could not in 100 years. The Council owes humanity a debt that can never be repaid. Commander Elena shook her head slightly. No debt is owed. We fought together. We won together. Now we'll rebuild together. As the Council fleet began secure and cleanup operations, the human officers allowed themselves to reflect on what they had achieved. They had faced an enemy that could predict and counter any logical strategy, so they had used strategies that defied logic. They had turned humanity's greatest military weakness, our unpredictability, into our greatest strength. The war was over. Humanity had joined the fight, and victory had come in just 5 hours.